Good evening. The First Minister has told BBC Scotland that a second independence referendum is now closer after the Prime Minister announced that Britain would quit the European single market. Theresa May promised to consider Scottish options, but warned she would do nothing that undermined what she called the precious union of the United Kingdom. In response, Nicola Sturgeon warned there must now be compromise, or that a further referendum appeared all but inevitable. This from our political editor, Brian Taylor.
Theresa May spoke to Nicola Sturgeon before delivering her speech today, but she already knew the First Minister's terms. Nicola Sturgeon would defer a second independence referendum if Britain stayed in the single market or helped Scotland to stay in with a special deal.
Strengthen the precious union between the four nations of the United Kingdom.
In her speech today, the Prime Minister categorically ruled out option one. Britain would not hold on to bits of EU membership.
What I am proposing cannot mean membership of the single market.
So down falls Sturgeon option one. But what about option two, a special deal for Scotland? Theresa May stressed she would consider the plan put forward by the Scottish Government, but there were clear limits.
We won't agree on everything, but I look forward to working with the administrations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to deliver a Brexit that works for the whole of the United Kingdom. As we do so, our guiding principle must be to ensure that as we leave the European Union, no new barriers to living and doing business within our own union are created.
Nicola Sturgeon concedes that doesn't sound like a special deal for Scotland is on, but she says she'll persist, arguing that Theresa May's overall approach is wrong.
It's clear that Theresa May wants to take the UK off a hard Brexit cliff edge. The direction she set today is not being driven by the rational best interests of the country. It's very clear it's been driven by the obsessions of UKIP and the hard right of her own party.
Does it bring, given what you say, an independence referendum closer?
Yes, undoubtedly. I said on the 24th of June I thought it was highly likely. I have tried to compromise ever since. I have put forward options in line with what I said I would do, examine all of the options, and I remain committed to exhausting those options. But I am not prepared to allow Scotland's interests simply to be cast aside.
Does it make a second independence referendum all but inevitable?
I think that is very likely the case, because what I've heard today from the Prime Minister is an inability to engage in discussions that further compromise. You know, there comes a point of democratic principle, I think, and that is if there are going to be such a fundamental change to the kind of country that we're going to be, and we are looking as if we're going to be taken down a path that wasn't what was contemplated in 2014, then it may be that the Scottish people want to do that, but they shouldn't be forced to do that without having the ability to choose between that and what I would think is a better future.
But more bargaining to come first, and at Holyrood tonight, MSPs voted to endorse ministerial efforts to preserve Scotland's place in the single market.
Well, to try to make sense of where this leaves us, I'm joined by Brian, who's at Holyrood, by David Porter, who's in Westminster, and by our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser, who's here in the studio. But first, Brian, the rhetoric about a second independence referendum has been ramped up throughout this Brexit debate. Does what happened today really make it, as we've heard from the First Minister, all but inevitable?
Yeah, I mean, that's the phrase I put to her, and she agreed with that phrase. You know what, Jackie, I really do think it's beginning to look that way. Left in peace, Nicola Sturgeon, I don't think will be contemplating an independence referendum at this stage, but Brexit changes everything. Just ask Theresa May. She previously supported the European single market, not least in the most recent Conservative manifesto, but now sounds confident and assured in saying that there can be alternative advantages to a global route. And you know, we also saw today a fundamental division, if you like, in Scottish and UK politics. If you support the Conservative Unionist Party or if you support the SNP. Conservative Unionists hear Theresa May saying, we listen to the people, and they cheer. Nationalists hear that and they say, which people?
David Porter, will this talk of a second independence referendum change Theresa May's mind?
Jackie, I think the short answer is no, it will not. UK ministers and Theresa May herself are at pains to say that they want to involve and engage with the devolved administrations as these Brexit negotiations get underway, and they want to hear what the Scottish Government has to say. But listening to someone is certainly not the same as saying that I agree with you. Before she made her speech this morning, Theresa May spoke on the phone to Nicola Sturgeon. She would have been perfectly aware of the First Minister's reaction when Theresa May would have told her that and it was her intention, that she was going to leave the single market. The view from Downing Street is that talk of a second independence referendum is a distraction. They say that it was all sorted out in 2014. Now we are in 2017. We are moving towards Brexit, and they argue that the decision to leave the European Union was taken by the whole of the UK. Therefore, it will be sorted out by the whole of the UK as well.
Douglas Fraser, we're told that Brexit means uncertainty, that any talk of another independence referendum means uncertainty. What does business make of today's manoeuvrings?
Well, business across Britain has been after more clarity about what is meant by a Brexit, what it could look like. They've got that today. They've got more of it than they expected from today's Prime Ministerial speech. They also wanted, certainly exporting businesses, to maintain access to the European Union's single market, or at least a customs union, access to recruit workers from elsewhere in Europe as well. They haven't got any of that, but they have heard the Prime Minister set out plans for what she thinks could be at least as good, acknowledging their concerns and other deals being struck with countries in other parts of the world. There's some scepticism clearly about how much of that can be achieved through negotiation. This is a starting point of what Theresa May would like over time. And that's the other question. How fast can this be achieved? That's the main concern, that there's a cliff edge, that we get 2 years of negotiation and we all fall off the edge of it, and business finds trade very badly disrupted unless plans are put in place very soon. That's their main concern. While they can live with a vision set out, seek out opportunities under any new regime, businesses now, they've got clarity, but in Scotland they've got another concern, because if we are moving towards another independence referendum in Scotland, then there's less clarity on that question for those that operate in Scotland.
Douglas, thank you, and thank you to David and to Brian.